Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our Friday live question and answer class, where we take your questions regarding the American accent, pronunciation, intonation, everything related to improving your personal and professional communication in American English. Sorry about that. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about American intonation. I'm going to give you an overview of what intonation is, how it works, take your questions regarding it, and of course, other questions that you may have, and just give you some basics that are really going to help you out with understanding American intonation and beginning to use it to improve your accent. So our accent, hi there, nice to see you. Our accent is made up of a number of things. First of all, pronunciation. This is something that we're definitely aware of, and pronunciation is how we're saying the sounds and words and how we put the words together in sentences, how they sound. Intonation is different. Intonation is the way we say the words in sentences. So which words are long, which words are short, does our voice go up, does our voice go down, how we stress the words. Intonation is a complex series of rules and information, but we're going to talk about some very simple and basic things that you can do that are going to help you understand and use it. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Thank you for saying hi. Please feel free to ask your questions at any time. I will take pauses and go through and make sure I address all of your questions. So why do we want to know about intonation? What's important about it? Number one, you can have perfect pronunciation. You can be saying all of the sounds in English correctly, all of the words correctly. And if you have different intonation patterns, you will still have an accent. You will still potentially be difficult to understand. Intonation has almost a bigger effect on how well you're understood than pronunciation in some cases. And so that's important. In addition, intonation conveys meaning, it conveys emotion, and it conveys hidden information. So things come across in my intonation that really play an important role in communication. Intonation comes when we think in English. Very good comment. Intonation has to do with the rhythm. You guys are correct, exactly. You have an understanding of what intonation is and how it works. And it's something that I've talked about and ways to help you develop it we'll talk about as well. We understand intonation before we understand anything else about language. So when you were a little baby, before you could say any words, before you knew any grammar, any vocabulary, you could understand the intonation patterns that your parents used because we hear those ups and downs, da 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 da. And so that's the very first thing you learn in terms of communication, and it's one of the first things you use as a small child and a baby as well. And so it's very primal. It really is rooted in our understanding, our way of connecting with other people. And so that first communication that we did, that first intonation from our native language, can be hard to let go of. We tend to apply that same intonation that we learned when we learn additional languages. And sometimes, for some languages, they're fairly similar and it works fairly well. And in other places, it doesn't work as well, and your intonation patterns sound very different from American English. Now, if you're speaking English a lot, if you're in America or elsewhere and you're speaking with a lot of people who are native speakers, you will pick up and use American intonation to some degree, but you probably don't really understand or know very much about it. Neither do Americans. If I'm talking to an American who doesn't have a background in language and linguistics, they have no idea what American intonation is. They can just use it. They learned it from the time they first learned language. The reason I point this out is that once you're aware of that about intonation, it becomes a little bit easier to hear it, understand it, be more flexible, and use it. So keep that in mind. Pascal, I'll come back to your question in just a moment. So intonation is complex, but understanding a few basics can go a long way. We're going to talk first about word stress, and I'll kind of explain what that is, demonstrate to you that you understand what it is and how it works when you're listening, even if you're not using it yet in speaking. Then we're going to talk a little bit about pitch and about how we convey some of that hidden meaning with intonation. So I'll come back to that in a moment. I want to answer Pascal's question. He says, he asks, can you say the sentence, "No tears left to cry"? I have a hard time saying the R, S, L sounds together. Tears left, to be more specific. A tip for that. Okay, so tears left. If I'm working on saying the word tears, I'm going to first try to make sure that I can say tear by itself, and I may have to slow down to glide from that E to the tear, tear, and then I'll add the Z sound, tears, tears. I may also just try ers, the sound and the Z sound together. So kind of playing around with the specific sounds. I can say ers, ooh. But I would probably, for you, say that because those are difficult sounds all in short sequence, you might want to just have a little pause between tears and left. So you can reposition your tongue and get ready for that L sound. So tears, left. Just have a small pause. There's no tears left to cry. And that won't interrupt your flow or your fluency. Again, getting repeated practice and moving from one mouth position to the next is really going to help you form a habit and feel more comfortable with that, but not feeling too concerned about the sounds and making sure that you can pause if you need to get the correct sounds is worth it for being understood. Good question. Okay, so back to our topic of intonation. Let's talk a little bit about word stress, what that is and what it means. So when I'm saying a sentence, I stress certain words, and the meaning of the sentence can change depending on which words I'm stressing. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to say the sentence, don't ask her that. Okay, so here's one way I can say it. Don't ask her that. Here's another way I can say it. Don't ask her that. So the first time I stressed her, don't ask her that. The second time I stressed that, don't ask her that. And you can probably hear that the meaning changes between those two different word stress patterns. So when I stress her, don't ask her that, I'm highlighting that you shouldn't be asking her, but maybe you should ask him or her or someone else. Her is stressed, and I can hear that that's the important word, versus when I say, don't ask her that, it's okay to ask her something else, but not that. So you can hear, and there's other iterations of these sentences. If I'm changing which word gets the stress, I change the meaning. That's important to understand, that meaning is conveyed with word stress. What did I do to stress those words? How did I change my intonation from the first to the second? Mainly what we do is when a word is stressed, we hold it longer. That's the most important thing to know. And the most important way to stress a word is using length. In addition, we have a pitch change for the stressed word. Usually we rise up to the stressed word and then we fall off to show our thought is done. But the pitch of the stressed word simply needs to be different than the words around it. It may go up slightly or it may go down slightly. Typically, I like to teach people to go up in pitch because then you have room to fall off to show that your sentence is finished. We'll talk more about pitch in just a moment. Pascal has a follow-up. He says, when you say tears fast, does it sound like tears? Because I definitely just hear it as tears with the E vowel, not the sound. Tears. Yes, I'm definitely not making a long distinction between the E and the It's a diphthong. It functions as one vowel, ear. I am sliding from the E to the tear. But if I go quickly, tears, ear, I'm in both mouth positions, in the E mouth position and the mouth position. So anytime I have a diphthong, that's a vowel where we slide from one vowel position to the other. I have to do both or we won't hear the sound correctly. But the perception of what you hear is probably correct. We're not really lengthening and spending a long time on T and a long time on It's not tears with the syllable change. It's just tears. Good question. Okay, so the second thing that is really helpful to learn about intonation is how you can be much better understood when you use length to stress words. Okay, I'm going to just pause a moment because we have another question. If you perceive the importance of intonation, rhythm, etc., after you get some level in your English skills, it's something that beginners or intermediate level don't understand. Um, I think that it is something that's not typically taught to beginners, but I do think that beginners can understand it and incorporate it in their language. Now, I'm talking at a fairly high level. My classes typically are a lot of intermediate and advanced English learners, simply because of the level of language that I use to teach. So if it's too complex for you, I will tell you that in my intonation playlist and some of my videos, I really break intonation down into some very simple steps. As I mentioned, we do learn intonation as we're learning our first language, and we learn it before we learn words and grammar. And so beginning to develop your ear, even for just hearing the ups and downs, even for imitating what you hear, is very valuable. It can really help you as you progress with your English. It's something that oftentimes we don't focus on in the beginning, and I believe that we would have less accent if we were able to focus on it while we're learning English. So that's a very good point, and I appreciate your comment. And I would suggest that some of the tips I'm going to give you for practicing with intonation and how to work on it can work for beginners as well as for more intermediate and advanced students. Okay, so you can be much better understood when you're speaking English if you use length to stress words. Listen to how I sound if I say a sentence with everything with even length without using the correct intonation. I'm going to say the sentence. I'm going to use even length across all of the words and syllables. Intonation is complex, but you can learn a few simple elements to improve your accent. Okay, so first of all, I sound fairly unnatural when I do it that way, maybe a little bit like a computer voice. Second of all, you can't really as easily hear which words are important, where one word stops and one word ends. I didn't really speak faster than I normally would. I just kept it even across everything. So you don't want to do that. What you want to do is lengthen and stress on the important words. So here's how it sounds when I use just my natural word stress. Intonation is complex, but you can learn a few simple elements to improve your accent. Now, when you're speaking, you don't sound like that first version. You're not necessarily just droning on without any intonation at all. You're definitely already using word stress when you're speaking, but you might be able to improve your intonation to be even more clear if you understand a little bit about using length, using pausing, and stress. You can see some videos about intonation for statements and questions, which words to stress, all of that in my intonation playlist. I'll give you the link for that now. We'll talk about it again later at the end, but I highly recommend going through some of these videos for more details, and they will help you. Okay, I see that we have another comment. If we have intonation, it means we speak like a robot. If we don't have intonation, if we don't use word stress and pitch changes, yes, I did sound like a computer or a robot when I was just going even across the syllables. So using length is very important. Then a third thing to know about intonation. Is talking about pitch. So when I say pitch, I mean high pitch, low pitch, how my voice goes up and down when I'm speaking. So we convey word stress and meaning with pitch. We also convey emotion and a communication connection with our intonation. When I use pitch and I have a range of pitch in my speech, I can sound much more engaged with my listener and also convey my meaning more effectively. So listen to how I sound if I don't use any pitch variation when I ask, how have you been? Okay, here's how have you been with no pitch. How have you been? Okay, do I sound like I care about how you've been doing? Not really. There's no emotion there. It sounds very flat. I pretty much sound uninterested, even though I'm asking the words, saying the same words. It doesn't sound, I'm not conveying the correct meaning, the correct emotional content. Now I'm going to say it again with some pitch, just my regular intonation pattern as an American. How have you been? That time, I hope you can hear that I sound more like I actually want to know. I'm actually asking you the question. There's some intent there and some engagement there that's not there if I'm just flat, how have you been? So I can even exaggerate this more to show more concern or more emotional content by exaggerating my pitch. How have you been? You can hear I'm going higher there. I'm lengthening even more. That exaggeration conveys a hidden meaning, a hidden emotion of, oh, I know you haven't been well. And now I'm asking with extra concern and emotion in my voice. So these subtleties, again, can be somewhat detailed, somewhat complex, but be assured that you already understand them when you're listening. You probably could hear the differences when you're listening to me, and you already naturally use many of them. Many of them exist in the intonation in your native language. Many of them you've picked up from speaking American English, from listening to American speakers, but you may not have been aware of exactly what you were doing. And having a little bit of that understanding, some of those fundamentals for intonation, can be super helpful. Okay, so great question for now. How can we improve our intonation in English? And then the next question, I'm going to go ahead and ask this too, because it kind of answers that first question. What are your thoughts about shadowing, like learning intonation, repeating what you say in your videos, for example? I feel that that's great. The best way to learn intonation is, number one, have some basics to understand what's happening. So I have a video that I just uploaded today with some of the basics of pitch. I'll go ahead and put that link in the chat for you guys if you haven't seen it yet. And on my intonation playlist, I go through how to know what words to stress, how to use pitch, basic standard intonation for statements and questions, understanding some of those rules and how to begin to apply them. So first, I would say, take what you learned today and what you can learn from the intonation playlist and get a sense of, yes, I understand a little bit about how this works and what the rules are. That being said, when I'm talking, I really can't be thinking so much about my pitch, about my length, about which words I'm stressing. I have to go with what comes naturally to me. And to develop and build that natural sounding intonation, imitation is the best way to go. So you can use my videos. You can use any video on YouTube. I especially like comedies, TV shows, because the actors in the shows will exaggerate their intonation a little bit, which can help you hear the ups and downs, hear the length, hear that, and stretch your willingness to speak with a different intonation. So listening and imitating is great. It's really the best way to improve your intonation, because you have to hear what's happening and then you have to try to say it. Oftentimes, you may find that you can imitate and do the length, but not necessarily the pitch, or vice versa. For most people, the pitch part is the one that tends to be a little bit more reluctant to change. We tend to have kind of a comfort zone when it comes to what pitch we speak in, and if we make changes, it feels a little foreign to us. I always tell my students, if you are speaking and it sounds a little strange to you or a little foreign to you, well, you are speaking a foreign language, you are trying to make a change, and probably that means you're doing it correctly. Now, you don't have to have a huge range of pitch. You don't have to be all over the place like the actors in a TV show. But if you try and you imitate and you are able to do these changes somewhat, then when you go to speak, you may be more flexible and more able to use American intonation patterns in your natural speaking. So that's what my recommendation is for intonation. In addition, so I would go to my intonation playlist, check out some of those videos. In addition, I cover intonation and how to change it in detail in my American Accent online course for the 6-week course. So I'm going to give you the link for that as well. It's a new course I'm pretty excited about because it will really give you the fundamentals for intonation as well as for pronunciation, and how to do both at the same time. So how to understand it, how to begin to practice to change it, and how to use it then for your personal and professional communication. So I hope that you'll check that out. There's a free trial. So you can go through and see exactly if a video course will work for you. I do also work with people one-on-one. And so if you'd like to contact me, I will give you a free consultation to tell you about different training options and see what might be a good fit for you. We have another question from Angel. How do you pronounce regularly? Oh, that's a good tricky word. Okay, so I'm gonna write that out for you. Lots of R's and L's in that word, which is why I'm guessing why you may be struggling with the pronunciation. And I'm looking for the spelling here, regularly. Okay, so first of all, for the word regularly, I'm gonna just make sure that you can see that correctly. For the word regularly, I wanna break it down into the syllables. So I'm gonna think about it as regularly. Okay, so 4 syllables with the stress on the first syllable. So reg is long, regularly. And yularly are short. So this J, that's the symbol for something that sounds like this. Regularly. So if I'm just saying regular, there's kind of a hidden ya sound in that, regular. And then if I add the li, then lurly. I have to move from the front position of the L to the back position of the lurly. So yes, try each syllable by itself. So just try sorry, I said it incorrectly. Regularly. It's tricky for even a native speaker, as you can tell. I hope that helps you, and that's a good, that would be a good word for me to make a video of how to say regular and regularly. So I'll add that to my list of requests to break that down for you even more specifically. I hope that helped you. Any other questions today about intonation or about pronunciation, words you'd like help with, particular sounds? Please feel free to ask those now as we're wrapping up. Thank you for being here today and being part of class. You had some really great questions and really good observations as well about intonation. So I think that there's a lot that you already understand, but you may not have really given much consideration to intonation. It can be very useful and very helpful. You're welcome, Angel. Thank you for the question. Okay, a few additional announcements. Next week, I will not be teaching my Friday class, so we'll resume again in 2 weeks. I may have a Thursday class for you. I have to see what my schedule looks like, but I'll be traveling, and so I will be unavailable on Friday. So check back with me for another live class in 2 weeks and possibly on Thursday next week. I will have some new classes here in the Seattle area, starting in Bellevue in October. I'm looking to start maybe a Saturday class as well as some weekday classes. So check out my website, speechmodification.com. If you're here in the area and you'd like to join one of my classes, it's a great way to get some specific feedback on your speech and some help and practice and to go through the process of learning things about the American accent. You're so welcome. Thank you for being here. You can get a calendar of all of my local events, free classes, as well as paid group classes on speechmodification.com. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat for you as well. Monday, October 22nd is my next free class in the Seattle area, and I hope you can come to that. It'll be at the Redmond Library, and we'll be talking about changing 10 words to change your accent, looking at some common words and how that how accent error patterns affect those words and how you can improve. Quick tip for today regarding intonation. I would say the best place to start, now that you've had an introduction, you understand a little bit about word stress and length and pitch, is to do that imitation practice. So if you're listening to the radio, if you're watching a TV show, if you're somewhere other than the US, find some American media and select a character on the show that you like the way they sound. So you might as well imitate something that you like. You can certainly imitate me and my videos, but it can be super useful to do something from a movie or a TV show where people are having a conversation, a dialogue, because there's a lot of back and forth with intonation, as opposed to me just talking to you or teaching. You're going to hear more in a conversation that will be helpful for you to imitate those ups and downs and the length. And don't worry too much about the specifics. Now that you have a little bit of the basics of intonation, you'll be hearing it when you listen to English, and perhaps also beginning to notice it in your own speech. So try that out. Get back to me with your questions, your comments, your concerns. You can always leave a comment on this video. If you didn't make it live, I do go back and check and answer those questions. And you can see past classes on my channel page. So I hope you'll check those out, and I hope you'll join me next week, probably on Thursday, and then again in 2 weeks on our regular Friday class. Thank you, Habib. I'm glad you find my classes useful. I will happily take your suggestions for other questions and classes you'd like to hear. I get my best ideas from my students because you tell me what it is you need. And so I appreciate your being a part of the class and your comments and questions. So thanks for being here today, everyone. I'll see you again next week. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound American, you can do it. speechmodification.com.